Hi, everyone. This is Amber Colbert from East Alabama Board of Realtors. You probably know me from the Board of Realtors office, or most of you probably recognize me from your Matrix, MLS, and technology courses here at East Alabama. I am recording a video for you today to help answer a question that has been coming through my email and through my phone several times a day for the last few weeks. And that is, what am I supposed to do when a house isn't selling? I have a lot of new agents that haven't really experienced a market shift, and I have some agents that have been in the market for a few years, but you've been experiencing what we call a COVID market, where it's really been a seller's market. But we're now shifting into a buyer's market, and this is something that a lot of people haven't experienced. So, of course, for any marketing information, that type of thing, you'll turn to your broker or your brokerage training team. For today's purposes, I'm just going to teach you how to use the MLS to predict these market shifts and how to communicate these market shifts to your sellers, explain to them how it works, show them the statistics to back up what you're saying, and also how to approach new sellers when you go into a listing appointment and you're confident that their house isn't going to sell as quickly as their neighbors may have a few months ago. Now let's dive over into the MLS. And when you reach your MLS dashboard, you'll see the first tool at your disposal called the Market Watch widget. Now go ahead and set your Market Watch widget to Alabama, Georgia, EABOR MLS. I keep mine set to EABOR MLS because I trust the statistics of my system and not state or national statistics, and we'll get into why that is in just a moment. But here's something as an MLS professional, this is something that I look at. You'll see that I have my Market Watch here set to residential properties on a 7-day time frame. Now, here's what I look at. Most of you will come into the MLS and you'll look at new listings. You'll look at things that are back on the market that maybe weren't available when you were working with buyers before. Or you may come in here and look at things that are coming soon if you're working with a buyer. But a lot of people don't come in here and look at the Market Watch from the view of a seller. And that's what we're going to do today. Now, when we are in a seller's market, typically what we'll see is the new listing count will be low. The pending and closed count will be higher, and they will be running sort of close to each other. They'll sort of balance each other out. Now, when we get into a buyer's market, this is typically what we see. We have a surplus of new listings. We have a pending and closed statistic that is lower and in some cases not equal. Now, when you look at your pendings and your closed sales, one way you can tell what is happening in the market when those numbers are different is go up here to your back on market statistic. When we have a gap between pending and closed, we can often see an increase in properties that are back on market, meaning at some point they were active under contract or pending, and now they're back active again. We'll also look at our withdrawn. In a good, nice market where everything is selling and sellers are having a really good seller's market, you're not going to see anything withdrawn unless there's special circumstances. But when we enter a buyer's market like this and things sit on the market longer, we do tend to see that withdrawn number come up. Now, oftentimes, withdrawn listings will be calculated back into the new listing count. So a lot of these withdrawn listings will just be listings that they withdrew, relisted to remarket it in a different way. And so your new listing account could be flawed. You may not even have, for example, here, 53 new listings. Some of these, or the bulk of those even, could be things that were withdrawn or expired and have become relisted. Now, we're also going to take a look up here at our price decreases. This is a big red flag. When we're entering a buyer's market, basic supply and demand, we all understand how that works. It doesn't matter how many new listings you have, you're going to see a lot of back on markets and a lot of price decreases in a buyer's market. We're also going to see a trend of a higher number or a higher value of concessions that sellers are offering to help buyers with those closing costs and that type of thing. So that's one thing that you can look at right when you get up in the morning. Look and see what the Market Watch looks like. Look and see if these numbers are balanced. Like I said, in a perfect market, we'll have new listings, we'll have pendings and close that are pretty consistent and pretty even numbers. But when these other statistics, back on market, price decrease, withdrawn, expired, when those start to pop up and those numbers start ticking up, we're starting to see a buyer's market where things are going to be sitting on the market a little while longer. Now, another great tool you can use to learn how the market is kind of working and communicate that to your sellers is to go to your stats tab in the MLS. Now, because I'm a data nerd, I don't really use the presets on the statistics page. I like to customize my reports when I run these. Now, let's say we want to do a time frame of year to date, January to July 2026. One statistic I like to look at is the close to list price ratio. That one can be fun. And let's do this by month. All right, you'll see that we're not hitting the 100% mark on the market here. Now let's go back to our search table. We'll go back to our MLS here. And we'll run the same statistic for just residential properties in our MLS. And you'll see we're also in our MLS not getting 100%. Those prices are going down. We're not getting 100% or even over 100% of list price like we were back in the seller's market. Now let's do some additional statistics here. Let's go to number of active listings. Add an additional here. Versus average days to sell. And that's what we're going to look like here. Number of active listings versus days to sell, meaning how long do the listings stay on here. Now let's look at the data that makes up this chart. You'll see that we have consistently increased the number of inventory that we have in our MLS, meaning the inventory is sitting there longer. So on average, we are having a higher number of listings sit there per month. While you see that our days to sell is not great, where we were seeing less than 30 days back in the seller's market, we're seeing it creep up to a couple of months. And again, this is an average. So you may have a statistic here where you've got a high number of active listings and the days to sell may be low, but that could be because of comp listings, pre-sold new construction, cash deals, that kind of thing. So when we look at an average, we want to do a little bit of margin of error there. But as you're seeing, days to sell here is not good. We're creeping back up into the 2-month range here. Now, one fun thing that we can compare to days to sell is average days on market. Now, when we look at days to sell here, this is the average amount of time from making the listing active to the listing going pending or active under contract. And then your total average days on market is going to include the amount of time it takes for it to go from active to sold. So this is going to be your contingency period, your financing period, your whole closing period here. Now, to get a better view, let's just reverse these statistics to play with them a little bit. Now, one thing as an MLS professional, one thing that I look for when I look for signs that we're entering into a market shift, entering into a buyer's market, is I look at, of course, days to pending and then total days to close. So if we have a big gap between days to sell and days to close, that can mean that there's financing issues out there. It's harder for people to get loans closed. It's harder for mortgage companies to get to the closing table. And once we see that gap start to develop, we'll see something like this, where we have the days to sold or the days to sell, which is days to pending or active under contract, is actually greater than the total days on market. And you say, well, how is that possible? How can it going from active to pending have a higher average than going from active to sold? Well, when we see a disparity in the total days on market average versus the days to sell or days to pending, that means a good percentage of the listings that went pending went back on the market and never made it to the closing table. So again, we want to see a pretty close days to sell versus total days on market, which means things are selling, they're getting to the closing table quickly. But when we see, again, when we see a big difference like this, that means on average it's taking longer to get to the closing table. And in some months, some things didn't make it to the closing table. And when you go back to your market watch, that's where that back on market stat will come in to play in these scenarios. Now, if we go back to our custom statistics here, we can also look at this on a yearly average. We could go back and look at it in 2025 and look at the same thing. And you'll see that in 2025, we did have a few dips. This is where we started to see quite a few listings that just weren't closing. It's taken a long time to get them to the closing table. And we even see a few months where we have a disparity in total days on market, so they didn't make it to the closing table. And as we came into December, we see that long period here of pending to closed. So we're going to start seeing those big shifts. Another way that you can play with this is the close price to list price ratio versus total days on market. As you can see in 2025, our MLS didn't really get close to an average of 100%. And then we had a days of market that are definitely over 30 days, definitely longer than what we saw during the COVID sellers market. We're seeing a much longer days on market. We're also seeing that spill over into 2026. So if we do a year to date here, you're going to see that that's consistent. For July, the average days on market, which is active to sold, active to closed, is on average 2 months. So when we look at averages aren't typically the statistic that we put our true faith in, because, one quick sale, one quick cash sale can throw the whole average off. So when we look at averages, we don't really want to look at the true number. We really want to look at that compared to something else. Like in this case, close price ratios or days to sell versus total days on market. Now, earlier in this example, I mentioned how certain statistics and averages may not be the best thing to look at on a regional, state, or national level. And let me go back and explain that a little bit. Now, when I pull my statistics as an MLS professional, I pull them directly from my system because I know the data is clean, nothing repeats, and I can trust what I'm looking at. Now, when you look at reporting on a regional, state, and national level, as an MLS, we do send in monthly and yearly statistics to the state, for example. But when the state puts that report together, they just take reports from around the state and create medians and averages and total units to create sales volume and that type of thing. But the reason we don't want to use that type of data when it comes to dealing directly with our sellers is it's not an accurate reflection of our local market. For example, if an agent has a new construction home and it's listed in 5 different MLSs, then those 5 listings are going to get included in the reports for every MLS that reports them to the state. So just that one house can get included in averages 5 times the same house. That particular address doesn't get filtered out in those final numbers. So that can throw your averages way off. And when we look at total sales volume, total units, a singular property in that case could be counted as 5 individual units and a total unit sum. So when we look at sums and we look at averages at a state level or a national level, imagine the margin of error from a national level when you got locals reporting to states and then states reporting to nationals. So you could have a property listed in MLSs in multiple states, and instead of getting counted 5 times, it can get counted 6 or 7. So you have to take that into consideration too. So when we're sitting down with our sellers and we're talking about the actual statistics for the market where their property exists, we want to turn to our MLS for those accurate statistics. Just because I know that the state and national statistics and regional statistics are highly publicized and they look really good, but sometimes it can make the market look like it's something that it isn't. It can make it look like there's a high volume of sales per unit, But then also you could see that there's been a lot of price decreases and a high number of days on market. And you're like, well, that doesn't make sense given that the volume increased, but that could be why. When houses sit on the market longer, people put them in more MLS systems to get more exposure. Luckily, with the EABOR MLS, we have a data share with multiple other MLSs, so we can see their listings and they can see ours, so you don't need to do that in that scenario. But a lot of smaller MLSs that don't have those data shares, agents and brokers will be pushed to put them in additional MLSs, which again can increase the number of times that particular property shows up in a total sum of units. So just keep those things in mind. So when your sellers come to you and ask you about statistics they've seen at a state or national level, you need to be prepared and explain that to them, how those statistics can be flawed versus the clean data that we get directly from the system in the area. Now, if we navigate back to our dashboard, I'm going to take a sample listing from our new listing bank and show you a few things that we can do to help our seller in a buyer's market. Now, one thing that we can do is let's find something that's been on the market for a few days, just so we can get full saturation into this product integration. You'll see an icon on your listing called Down Payment Resource. Now, when we click on this icon, it will take us into the Down Payment Resource product. And this product shows you what down payment resources are available for that property based on property address, property location. And you'll see a long list of these here. Now, lenders can see these as well, but this is something that you can advertise to help your sellers get a little bit more traction, because typically a buyer's agent and a buyer will be looking with a lender, whereas from a seller's agent perspective, you want to make the property look more attractive. So your potential buyers may not have looked at this property, but now that they know they can get down payment assistance for this, it may make it more appealing to them, where it may have been their second or third choice in the beginning. Now, of course, if you want to advertise any of this, you do need to disclose that this is based on the buyer's qualification for these programs. They're not guaranteed. It is just possible that this property will qualify for these items. Now, when we return back to our MLS sheet, we're also going to see a link that says Live Mortgage Info. Now, when we click on Live Mortgage Info, you'll see real-time updates for just generic mortgage information for 30-year fixed, 15-year fixed, 30-year FHA, VA, and conventional arm's length transactions. This is something you can also communicate to your sellers when you're discussing price. And again, typically when you're talking about down payment and payments, you would consider that information you would communicate to a buyer. But this can also help you when you're working with a seller to show them where they stand. What would a buyer need to do to purchase this home at your desired price? How much money are they going to be putting down? How much is a mortgage payment going to be with estimated taxes and insurance and PMI? So that's something to communicate them, to give your sellers a realistic view of what buyers' needs are, what buyers' limitations are, etc. Now, if we leave this product and we navigate back to our Matrix MLS, and then we navigate back to our dashboard, you're going to see additional products on here that you can use to your advantage. One thing in particular I like to share with agents and tell them to share with their sellers is if you go to our EABOR website and you look at our consumer search for property, you'll see that we are partners with Nestfully.com. Now you can click here to enter your Nestfully search, and Nestfully is just like any other third-party search site. But this is a site that partners with MLSs only, so it's not independently owned. It's owned by MLSs. And our listings go directly to this site. Now, what differentiates this site from your other third-party sites is listings come straight from the MLS, so there's no third-party proprietary information on here. And also, the only contact and the only lead for this is generated directly to the listing agent. Whereas on other third-party sites, Your seller may see that it's getting a lot of clicks, a lot of views. Why aren't we getting showings? Why aren't we getting information? Why aren't we getting leads? Well, that's because somebody is paying for a lead subscription on those third-party sites. And even if the listing agent pays for the same subscription, it's still just sort of a carousel, just sort of a lottery carousel. You never know who's actually going to get the lead. Even if it's your listing, you may not get it. So Nestfully is great because not only do they partner with us, they make our listing agents a priority. So just like any other third-party site, you can just grab the link for this listing. You can share it on your social media. You can share it with your clients, and they can share it on their social media. And again, this is a beautiful listing. It looks really good. It has a lot of information on it. But most importantly, those clicks and leads are all going to come to you. Anybody that clicks on it, anybody that requests information, that's going to come directly to the listing agent so that you can communicate that with your seller. And you won't lose out to an agent who paid for that lead and steer someone towards another property. So we have a lot of good resources here for you. We have a lot of information that you can share with your sellers to show them what is happening in the current market. Now, one other question I get when we are in a buyer's market like this is I often have people call me and ask me, can I withdraw it and relist it to make it look like a new listing? You absolutely can. I know there are some MLSs that don't allow you to do that, but we are very, we're very seller oriented here. We really believe in property owners' rights and sellers' rights to market their property the way that they wish. So we do allow, at seller's request, to have properties withdrawn and relisted as a fresh property. You can relist it with a new price, new photos. Of course, when you relist a property and it has a new MLS number, it's going to show up on all those third-party sites as a new listing. So it's going to show up right at the top of those search results, right up at the top of the ticker, just like it's brand new. And that's something that modifications won't do. So if you go in and change a price or change your remarks to add seller concessions, you're not going to see that happen. It's not going to boost that listing to the top of those search results on those third-party sites. Relisting it will also put it back into your new listing category. So any agent that may have seen it before, it'll put it in front of their eyes once again with maybe new photos, new information, and a new price if that's applicable to your situation. Now, if you have any other questions about the tools that are in your MLS package that you can use to help your sellers in this buyer's market, you can always give us a call, and you can always contact me to set up a 30-minute to hour-long private training session if you would like to do that for yourself or your group. And in the meantime, good luck navigating this market shift, and let us know what we can do to help you with this transition. Thanks.